Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm not sure I'm passionate about anything anymore. At my age. I'm also delighted that Edward asked me to launch his book, because I've known him for about 400 years. For a long, long time anyway. This is the 5th book that Ed has written, and all of his books reflect his interest in history, and particularly local history. But he takes it all in the context of what was happening nationally, and the story of the area around here, Burrencourt, I have to put it first obviously, Ballyporeen and Ballyluby, because we're going alphabetical order, and Clogheen, and all, as far as Care and all of South Tipperary, is actually a microcosm of what was happening nationally. And all the great events in Irish history are also reflected in this area. For example, for the 1798 rebellion, 1,000 United Irishmen surrounded the town of Care. And during the War of Independence here in South Tipperary, the area of Burrencourt, again first, Ballyluby and Clogheen, was central in the struggle for national freedom. And in terms of the great tragedies that are part of Irish history, the famine obviously had a huge impact here, and the effect, which was cataclysmic in the valley, has already been documented by Ed Reardon in his Famine in the Valley. And it seems about 100 years ago since we were at that book launch. 1995, was it?
95.
Yes. Well, there you were. 1995. We had a great day anyway. And we're having a good night here as well. The book we're launching here tonight is entitled Lonely Little God's Acre, A History of Shanrahan Church. And in fact, it's much more than a history of the church. It includes a very good chapter on Father Nicholas Sheehy, who was the parish priest of the United Parishes of Shanrahan, Ballysheehan and Templetenny, and who was hung in Clonmel, and in fact hung, drawn and quartered in Clonmel in 1766, and his head was put on a spike, which was like dreadful. Ed also documents the attempts here in Clogheen to erect a suitable memorial for Father Sheehy. It was in 1898, and it's of interest that the secretary of that committee was one Ed Reardon, of course I presume his great-grandfather. The subscriptions at the time for the memorial, which is obviously in the churchyard in Shanrahan, were between a guinea, £1, 1 shilling, to 2 shillings, which is about 50 to 500 euros, which is in modern day terms, which reflects the enthusiasm for the project. And of course, Ed also mentioned in the book that there is a project ongoing here to refurbish the memorial. It hasn't yet been carried out. Father Sheehy, of course, his name is part and parcel of this area, which can be seen in the name for the GA. And actually tonight now there's a memorial mass for in Burrencourt for the dead of the GA, the past members who've died. The other parts of Ed's book are, he looks at the antiquities in Shanrahan, including the castle, which is now like a mere stump of what it was originally. And he has a drawing, a very interesting drawing by Dunoyer, who worked for the Ordnance Survey, and he drew a picture of the castle in 1851, and he shows it surviving then to a considerable height. Now there's only a small bit of masonry left. I actually dithered about the next section of what I was going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, because you know I'm either a very brave or a very stupid person. It's about St. Cataldas. I'm not sure I'm not the only person who might doubt this, whether there was ever a St. Cataldas. He doesn't appear in the Dictionary of Irish Saints, which is published by Padraig O'Riordan, but Padraig O'Riordan has got rid of a lot of saints. He thinks they were never there. He could be right. But the thing about St. Cataldas, which I find most interesting, is that I think it's an effort by the people of Clogheen and the area in 1996 to preempt the great gathering of one that we're looking into now in 2013. And I actually think it was a very good attempt to increase the number of visitors, and I must congratulate you all on that. You were well ahead of the posse. The church, or probably the churches in Shanrahan, indicate a succession of building history. Parochial churches, parish churches as we understand them, were introduced by the Anglo-Normans, and there possibly was an earlier church in the site. It documents the whole succession of building history in Shanrahan, and also of interest, what I found interesting anyway, was he talks about the taxes levied on farmland to support the upkeep of the Church of Ireland churches and clergy, which ultimately resulted in the tithe war, where landowners were supposed to give 10% of their earnings to the church, but they refused to pay it. One big bone of contention about it was that the rectors and the pastors were absentee, so they didn't feel that they should be supporting them anyway. The church in Shanrahan finally closed in 1819 and it was abandoned. Obviously there was a new church here. It also discusses the castle in Shanrahan, which was probably 13th century in date. And a very important part of Shanrahan history is the O'Callaghan mausoleum, which was dated to about 1742. It's a very, very important part of our history in terms of, well, obviously it's the burial place of the O'Callaghans, but it's also a very important Georgian relic, and there are very few of those in the country, and hopefully at some stage there will be a project that will actually restore it, because it seems to me from the photographs that Ed had in his book that it's actually continuously in decline. Now there is a project at the moment which is the cataloguing of the memorial stones or the headstones in various graveyards around here, and it's being run by the Historic Grave Projects of South Tipperary Development Company, which will produce ultimately a whole listing of all the headstones in the area. We did this a number of years ago, and Deirdre Walsh is here who helped the project. We did it a number of years ago in Burncourt, but of course, you know, we're always a little bit ahead of the posse up there. We did it under a student summer scheme at the time, but there is this project which would be great. It would be very beneficial for us here in this area, and also for people who are abroad who are trying to trace their relations and the burial place of their forefathers. In fact, over the last few months I've had calls from Australia and places like that looking for information on Ballysheehan graveyard. Fortunately enough, email is great, you don't have to pay the postage. So one thing that I noticed as well that Ed mentioned is that Lord Sackville of Knoll, he's buried here as well, obviously British aristocratic family, but he's laid to rest here in Shanrahan with all the people, rich and poor alike, in the graveyard. Death is a great leveller. I don't have many more pages, it's okay. Now, it also details various parish priests in this parish. There's a very comprehensive section on that. I did notice that for Father Matthias Casey, he was a parish priest in this area. He's also connected to Burncourt because he was one of the trustees of the National School when it was built in Burncourt, himself and Lord Lismore and a few more. The book itself contains very many interesting facts and figures, and it's actually it's an easy read. It's a very nice style. It would make a very good Christmas present, and it would also make a very good gift to anybody who's living away from here at the moment, far from God's Acre. Before I finish now, I would like to acknowledge one thing as well, which is the community employment scheme here, where the upkeep of the graveyard I'd like to acknowledge that, and the person maintaining the graveyard, because years ago a lot of these graveyards were in a very poor condition, but with this community employment schemes, the graveyard at Shanrahan and the graveyard in Ballysheehan are now at least accessible. You can walk into them, you can see the headstones, and it's a great asset to the area. Well, finally, I'm sure you're sick of me now anyway, I'd like to congratulate Ed on this very fine book, and I'm actually looking forward to his next book. We had a very brief discussion on this for 2 minutes, but I can see the seed germinating in his mind already. I'd say we'll be back here again. Of course, behind every good man is a good woman, and I'm sure Carol had a considerable input into this book. She's over there. And I think that's all I have to say. Well done.
Thank you all.
Well done.